Hello and welcome to another edition, a mini edition of No Nonsense with Pamela Wallen. The longest serving government in Canada, nearly 17 years, keeps the reins of power in Saskatchewan, but with fewer seats and the loss of some key cabinet ministers. The Sask Party, led by Scott Moe, is back in charge, but the NDP has taken control of the province's two big cities. So where do we go for insight? To Mr. John Gormley, 25 years on the air as a radio host. He can't really quite totally stay off it because I think you were there all last night, weren't you, John, talking about these results on radio?
I was. It was a late night, Senator, and it was good to revisit Saskatchewan politics.
No, it's been a long time. You've been writing about this and watching this on a daily basis. I think the thing that just really, troubled me is because this is a constant issue in our province and other places, but the rural-urban divide. The Sask Party is now everywhere in the rural part, and the NDP run the cities.
And this was something that you and I used to talk about and remembered well back in even the late 80s, early 90s. Certainly for the last 20 years, the NDP owned the cities. The non-NDP was everywhere else. That had eased with the 5 elections ago of the Sask Party. You had some big suburban seats that safely had Sask Party MLAs ensconced, some of them with pluralities of 4,000 votes.
Yeah.
So you could see the growing support, and a lot of it was not partisan. I was talking with a Sask Party strategist last night off the air, and I mean, here was the narrative. Saskatchewan's economy, which punches above its weight, things are going well economically. There has to be resource development. There has to be this and that, and immigration and population, so we can pay for the vital social services. Tell that to a mom and a dad who don't have a family doctor. Tell that to them when schools, brand new, beautiful schools, are already bringing containers in because the classrooms are too small. They want somebody to say, I get healthcare and I'm going to help fix it. So there was a bit of an abstraction, I think, with the government that they saw healthcare as a consequence of a better economy. No, people have said, this isn't working. You got to fix it.
So that's how the NDP moved itself back up, by really focusing on that issue as well.
Absolutely. And with them, it was a pretty easy slogan. Scott Moe broke healthcare. Scott Moe ruined schools. So, I mean, that's an easier sell when you're in opposition. So I think, and the premier last night, I was very impressed. I mean, this was an empathetic, relating Scott Moe who said, I've heard what you've said about healthcare, and we're going to fix this. Well, had he run the campaign that way, I think, of those 26 big city seats, the NDP has 24 of them. You had 5 cabinet ministers sent packing. I think had that messaging been clearer in the campaign, you probably would have had 2 or 3 of the 5 ministers survive, and you would have had some beachhead maintained in the cities.
So as you always say, elections are social barometers. And so what was the population in general saying? Sort of, go clean up your act. You've been here too long. It's time for a change, but we're not really ready to give it to them, but we're going to slap you upside the head. Like, it's not a great time for incumbents. Let's put it that way.
A very tough time for incumbents. So again, there's a good news, bad news. Good news is the Sask Party becomes only the 3rd government in Saskatchewan history to get 5 terms. And in fact, by the time this term is done, they will be the 2nd longest serving government. The first was Walter Scott's Liberals, who got 24 years. The Sask Party will have 21. And then Tommy Douglas had 20. So, I mean, this is not without historical import. But a friend of mine at lunch today, actually, just before you and I were chatting, said, I hate that when people say the voters sent a message. The voters don't all get together and send a memo.
Right.
I said, they don't, but they do. Because at the doors, there wasn't this idea that I'm absolving myself of the Sask Party, you're old, tired. You didn't listen to me on hospitals and schools. So I don't think for the Sask Party, this is the inevitable or inexorable decline 4 years from now. But gosh, as you say, it's certainly a slap upside the head You've got 4 years, you better fix this.
And 3 elections in a row where the numbers have declined. So
absolutely,
this is going on. I heard someone else say, and I've heard this from my own family and my own friends at home, which is you kind of get off message. When we're in a situation as we are federally and provincially of tough times, right? I mean, everybody is dealing with the affordability crisis. You call it whatever it is, the lack of preparedness for the immigration numbers, the impact on the healthcare system, the education system, that Scott Moe decided in the middle of the campaign to say, the biggest single issue for me today and what I'm going to do on day one is make sure that girls and boys have separate change rooms. And people just said, yeah, we kind of agree with you on that, but not the most important issue, Premier.
Absolutely. And the extension of that, and you're seeing this, I think, I don't know if it's showing up in the polling that the party does, but certainly a lot of government insiders are telling me the same thing. Party supporters love that you stand up for Saskatchewan. Party supporters like it when you kick Justin Trudeau in the shins.
Right.
But that doesn't get me a family doctor, and that doesn't fix schools. So there's got to be a recalibration, not that Scott Moe will give up on his Saskatchewan advocacy or boys don't change and girls change rooms, but those have to be contextualized in that it's an empathy thing. I mean, if you look me in the eye and say, again, the famous Bill Clinton line, I feel your pain and I want to do something that you don't get hurt anymore. That is amazing as a political tool, and the Premier has always had a bit of that distance on that. Well, I'm trying to run a better economy so we can pay for healthcare. That you didn't feel my pain with that response.
Yeah, because that's a two sides of the same coin, right? Which is it's the economy, stupid.
Exactly.
But I feel your pain. I mean, both Clinton messages pretty strongly. So what does this mean for Scott Moe? One of his strongest allies, of course, has been out of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, which he just got sent packing by the voters as well. So what's that message? Is that about incumbency, or is that about being off message again?
Bit of both, I think. I mean, clearly, though Brad Wall had the first 10 years, and they were pretty good 10 years, although Premier Wall, just before he departed, there was an austerity budget. They cut a number of things, and for the first time in his life, Brad Wall wasn't popular. But Scott Moe, I think, navigated through the pandemic well. But I've been fond of saying the pandemic to any politician, left, right, or center, became like dog's years. They all aged an extra 6 or 7 years. Even though the pandemic was only a couple of years, there aren't many of them left who went through the pandemic. And I think with Scott Moe, he's got to reflect on this. This January, it'll be 7 years, which is a good long time. But does he then double down and say, I want to recalibrate this next 4 years, or I'll get ready to leave a couple of years in and then leave the party ready for that recalibration? And I think that's an intensely personal decision. And I don't know if anybody makes it for him.
Well, the thing is we're all watching in Ottawa on an hourly basis when the leader does not understand that their time has come and gone, and the party pays the price and the country pays the price. Do you think Scott will sort of see that and say, look, I'm going to put together a new cabinet, we're going to get back to work, and then I am going to give everybody time to get ready and find some new leadership candidates, and let's do this properly and over time so there's no panic?
I think that you put your finger on the issue, which is over time. It would be most, I think, precipitous, if he decided in year 3 that he was going to step aside and, it would be like throwing a Hail Mary. I think if it's going to happen, it has to be measured, it has to be strategic, and there has to be some thought given to what the next chapter should look like. Because, again, we have no template in provincial politics for 21-year governments. This is something that most of them by 9-10 years have run themselves out of gas. And the only I guess, example you use is, start with Peter Lougheed in Alberta in 71, then fast forward to Ralph Klein in the early 90s, 22, 23 years in. But then you've got Don Getty, you've got Ralph Klein, you've got the succession of issues there. So the party itself has to, I think, define what it wants to look like. And the party is fairly united. But again, there's been a few fractures as well along the right side, where you've had a couple of these parties like the Sask United, the Buffalo Party, and they're very unhappy out on the right fringe.
And they didn't do much in terms of a showing.
No, not at all. In fact, the Sask United Party, the Buffalo Party at least finished second in 4 ridings in 2020. The Sask United didn't even do that, although, interestingly enough, and I don't know which genius in the Sask United Party dreamt this one up, they ran a candidate in Regina, Wascana Plains, which was by far the biggest, most popular Sask Party riding in Regina. Christine Tell went down last night by a couple of hundred votes. The Sask United had 340 votes. So their vote split effectively elected the NDP. And I'm not sure that was intended. But.
Yeah. So Scott Moe is in, he lost 4 or 5 cabinet ministers last night. 4 or 5 had announced their intention not to run again before the election. So he's kind of dealing with a new but reduced slate. Does he have people to work with?
He does. He's got a couple of people who have been in and out of cabinet who are very good performers. And in the past, they were vexed mainly by geography. They were good performing ministers, but as you know. But now I was looking at the list of people elected last night, and there's at least 4 or 5 of them who would be cabinet worthy. And I'm not sure, again, the premier's always been, he's a bit cagey. He often doesn't put somebody straight into cabinet. He wants to sort of watch them, see how they perform, especially when they're told they're not in cabinet. So, but there's a young lawyer in Weyburn. There's at least 4 or 5 I can name who I think are cabinet material. So that might be a good renewal, except the challenge is none of them live in Saskatoon or Regina. So you're going to have to calibrate carefully to keep urban people in the minds, the attention of cabinet.
Let's drill down that on that a bit. I was reading quite a bizarre post on X today about how they need the city. Of course, they need the city because the cities are the center of all the economic activity. And I'm going, no, not in Saskatchewan. Actually, energy and agriculture are a thing. But you do need the cities in the sense that they are the population base. They are the center, as ask Justin Trudeau. If he does well in downtown Toronto, he doesn't need to care about Saskatchewan because of the number of seats. So what is the divide there, and what's the move?
The move, and I think that's going to be the key, the move is very much what we've been talking about, this idea that I understand at an empathetic level what you're going through. Part of the repopulation is going to be challenging because the NDP did win. Well, let me put it this way. My worst numbers when I was doing good, better, best was 3 Sask Party seats in Saskatoon and 1 in Regina. Well, they have 0 in Regina. Right. And maybe 2 in Saskatoon. So there are some strong Sask Party seats in Saskatoon and Regina that are now with the NDP. So my position strategically would be start focusing on those seats very early. And again, one of the weaknesses of the Sask Party, and I'm going to put this out there, I think it's a weakness sometimes when you're too grassroots. They have these nomination battles that, go on, Billy, who was on the executive for years, is running.
Right.
And then brand new Canadian so-and-so walks in because he's got, 800 members of his temple. They get elected. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, here are 2 candidates who are kind of trying out politics. So will the Sask Party be courageous and strategic enough to pick some really high-profile local professionals, probably women, in Saskatoon and Regina, and say, you're the candidate in Wascana Plains. You're the candidate in Saskatoon Southeast. Pick them early, set it up, and say to the NDP, we're serving notice. Those are our ridings, and we're taking them back.
Yeah. and put money behind. No, I mean, sometimes you're right. This kind of democracy, democratic process, which is the person that shows up with the most numbers and the busfuls wins the day, which is not a strategic move. It's just,
It's not. And even
yeah,
when you're cabinet building, I mean, I think you want people who
yeah,
have a demonstrated record of some excellence, whether
yeah,
it's in
yeah,
a profession, academia, whatever they do. And sometimes you have to go find those people and say to them, would you run for us?
yeah. Go and seek them out. So, Carla Beck, leader of the NDP, 8 leaders in the last 15 years. Is that about right in terms of numbers?
Yeah,
Has the party settled on her now? Is she in?
she's in whether she wants to be or not. And I think there is a smattering in certain NDP circles. I mean, and I won't name names, but there's a couple of people in the NDP who've been kind of waiting their, when the party's ready to strike,
Yeah.
these would be people who might have illusions of being premier.
Uh-huh.
You can't tell Carla Beck what to do now because she
Yeah.
started with 13 MLAs. She now has 26. So
Right.
Carla Beck will decide what Carla does. So, I mean, she's been earnest and hardworking. A little bit of it is, does she have that sort of gravitas? Does she have that kind of innate magnetism and leadership that tells me she's a premier? I'm still a little bit out on that.
Yeah.
I can, again, the two people I'm thinking of who are kind of waiting in the wings have it in an abundance.
Right.
So they're not going to fool around at this point. So that's again, it's not a curse, it's a blessing. I don't want to take away from a good night for Ms. Beck, but the NDP have Carla Beck going forward.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it because everybody wants the top job when it's there, you know.
Yeah.
But they don't want to do the slogging always that gets you there. And the other thing that happens, and the NDP, of course, will discover this again, that as their numbers increase, they get more money to play with, to do all the opposition research, to make the Sask Party's life, difficult in the chamber, in the legislature, because they can.
Yep, absolutely. And this is where and I'm sort of going over, I know a few of the new NDP MLAs, one or two of whom are really impressive, but I've
Yeah,
long been vexed. The NDP have gone anywhere from 13 MLAs. I think, well, they had 20 back in '07 when Brad Wall was elected, but they had us 9 and 10 for a time. Carla Beck, I thought, was challenged because if I said she was premier material, I could have put maybe 4 of them being cabinet material. Now that number's bigger. So you
yeah.
will start to see, I think, the closer, if this is going to be the final 4 years of the Sask Party, you'll see some designs inside the NDP to buttress that up, again, by bringing in higher profile people who could be ministers. If it's going to be a dogfight, and I argue the Sask
Yeah.
Party could make it one, you might see some New Democrats holding back a bit.
You, for years on the air, talked about the issues of the mayors in Saskatoon in particular, and we're seeing Doug Ford in Ontario respond to this. Things like bike lanes, which drive people nuts.
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. You sit there on a street and watch an ambulance try to get down the street and they can't do it. So he's taken that on, but that's totally at odds with the way local mayors view it, and obviously the population who has a different view of environmental issues, of, how you live. You can't ride a bike if you live in Wadena. At least, I mean, you can ride it in Wadena, but you can't ride it to Saskatoon from Wadena, right? So is that issue going to now sort of emerge? It's already a hot button issue with energy, climate, the contest between the two worldviews.
A little less so in Saskatchewan because even though the old days of everybody was one generation away from the farm, even though
Yeah.
that's become much more urban, much more now big numbers of immigration, Saskatchewan's still pretty grounded as to where our economy comes from. But
Yeah.
there's been a few issues. I mean, a good example is the insistence, and Mr. Trudeau doubled down again the other day, that
Yeah.
he'll deal directly with mayors. Well, as a creature of statute, every municipality has no independent existence. Every municipality is the creature of a provincial statute. And there is a governing principle that the senior government, the province, can jump in occasionally and tell the city, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's been the Trudeau influence where he's wanted to do gun bargaining with mayors. He's wanted to do this housing accelerator directly with mayors. I forget the issue, but even in Saskatoon the other day, one of Trudeau's cabinet said, well, this is a recalcitrant province. We're just going to deal with the city. That gets divisive, but it also puts the province in a position that might actually be advantageous, because if you can be seen to be putting your foot down with the cities as yet another way of stopping Trudeau's interference, that's not bad either. But we don't typically tend in this province to have too much friction or tension points between the big municipalities and the province.
I'm assuming that the war with Ottawa continues, that Scott Moe will continue to wage war on the carbon tax or agriculture or energy, or do you think part of the message of the voters was as well, tone that down?
Tone that down if you're going to talk about it when you should be helping me find a family doctor.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's possible to have again, not a binary system. You can still be the Scott Moe on the carbon tax and Trudeau, but contextually, you're protecting Saskatchewan while first and foremost, you're doing healthcare and schools.
Protecting Saskatchewanians.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Just a final word. I can't have a conversation with you without asking you what's your bet on the federal front? What are you thinking about all this stuff?
And I mean this is no disrespect to your vocation as a senator. I don't know what it is. I feel a fatigue and a weight about federal politics I've never felt in my life. I mean, the closest I guess would have been the National Energy Program back in 1980, 81 with another Trudeau, where you just wanted to throw your hands up and say, gosh, I've given up on the whole lot. Where we are here, first of all, the machinations of Mr. Trudeau and his existential crisis and his narcissism and his hubris, I mean, that's him. But as a Saskatchewanian, you just get so tired of it all after a while. And again, let's point out, even though the 4-year statutory election is due in 25, constitutionally, you can have an election every 5 years.
Yeah.
So wouldn't this be dandy if we had to put up with Trudeau doing this all the way until 26? So I'm just tired of the whole thing.
I find that as well, that there's a fatigue with all of this stuff. Yet another emissions cap. How is he going to, on April 1st, raise the carbon tax again? Does he really want to do that in the middle of a campaign? You can go through the list. But I also feel like the anger and the disassociation from the country, from the center, is getting stronger again. Now, I know it's not reflected in things like the Sask United Party and this and that, but it's not like a separatist movement. It's a disengagement movement. You don't even know who we are.
You put it more eloquently than I could. That's exactly how I feel. I have moments where I flirt with the idea, of Alberta and Saskatchewan merging to become, the Buffalo that, Haltane had conceived of in 1905. I'm even beyond that. These people have no point of reference. What our economic drivers are here, even what our social impetus is as Canadians. So yes, we're Canadians, but we're just not their kind of Canadians for now.
Yeah, and the thing that drives me nuts is they do not still here in the center of the universe, Ottawa, as I look out my window, understand the contribution that energy and agriculture make to paying the bills here.
Bingo. So true.
No healthcare. John Gormley, great to talk to you and catch up. It looks like you're semi-retirement from radio, but you're carrying on with working at a law firm and golf. It's all working well for you.
It's working well. I do as much management labor law as they'll let me. I upped my number of golf games. I have kids and grandkids to travel to. We have a world to see. So I'm blessed. It's been it's almost a year now since I hung up the radio gig, and it's been
Exactly.
a fabulous year.
And even the Rough Riders started to get better at season end, even
Things have gotten hot. Who knows?
great to talk with you. Thanks, John.
Senator Pam, thank you.
Great. John Gormley, 25 years on the air as the voice of Saskatchewan on radio. So it's great to catch up with him. Thanks all of you for tuning in. This is a little thing for us. We care about what goes on at home, but thanks for listening because I think it is important. It does speak to other parts of the country as well. That's it for No Nonsense with Pamela Wallen. We'll see you soon.